Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
Tortorella in Columbus made the playoffs 4 straight years. 50-win season, 45-win season, 47-win season.
Yeah. New voice of the Vancouver Giants, Eddie Gregory, brought that up, ripping me. That's fine. Regular season wins are nice.
And Ryan,
I didn't know that that's what the teams play for, but
there's not a ton of young coaches coming up. You look at some of the hires, and it's the same guys getting recycled.
I think there are a lot of young coaches that are just not getting an opportunity.
Then some aren't ready, some aren't getting the opportunity.
Nothing
look at
wrong
Jeremy
with old
Colton.
guys.
Yeah, Carlton. Yeah, I love the Carlton hiring in Abbotsford.
Yeah, nothing wrong with old guys. Our guest today, including John Shannon, who's a youngster, by the way, are sponsored by Basant Motors. Basant Motors celebrating its 31st anniversary this year, and to celebrate, they're continuing to give back to the community with their annual scholarship. This year, it's over $31,000. Learn more at basantmotors.com. John Tortorella, a lengthy bag skate for the Philadelphia Flyers. Day one on the ice for Torts bag skate as we bring in NHL analyst, co-host of the Bob McCowan podcast, John Shannon, who I'm sure has seen a bag skater or two. How are you, sir?
I am doing well. I don't know what you're doing talking about old guys. We're all young at heart, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
Where are you, by the way? It looks tremendous there.
I am in lovely Canmore, Alberta.
Oh, yeah.
Ready to play Stewart Creek. Wow. Tee off in 90 minutes.
Getting ready for that hockey season, are you, John?
Well, I'm one of those guys. I'm an old-fashioned guy. I don't necessarily like training camp. Get me ready for October the 12th. I'll be there.
Yeah. Well, of course, training camps, you blink your eyes and it's over. We all remember the 1 week, 2 week training camps.
Well, let's face it. Players are in shape now 12 months a year. They start the regime after that 3-day trip to Puerto Vallarta, and then they come back and start working on it. And, we're going to see games on the weekend, guys. Yeah. The camp started as of yesterday, and today more so. First day on the ice, and then we're going to see games Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. It's amazing.
Yeah, I didn't even mention it earlier today. Canucks have a split squad, 2 split squad contests Sunday against Calgary. John, bag skates, torts, Philadelphia. Are you a fan of that sort of thing?
That is, I would tell you that's the 390-day frustration of John Tortorella not having a job.
Yeah.
He's had a year and a bit to think about, what am I going to do the first day? What am I going to do? And just to set a tone. And let's face it, there's a good chance the Philadelphia Flyers might be 30, 31, or 32 in the National Hockey League. This will be John Tortorella's toughest challenge as a coach to coach in Philadelphia. So nothing what goes on with the Flyers right now surprises me.
John, the big question here is Canucks training camp kicked off in Whistler this morning. Will they make the playoffs? You talk to a lot of people around the league. What's the general feeling about the Canucks right now?
Well, to me, and I think to a lot of people, and we had discussions even on our own show earlier this week, I think the Canucks, I think you group them in with the Kings and the Golden Knights as teams that are fighting for that third spot in the Pacific Division. I do think Calgary and Edmonton are better than anybody else, but then I think that the Canucks are right in there. And when you look at the record that this team had with Bruce behind the bench and with the attitude I think that changed with the players, I think that's a key thing to remember, is that this team was a really good team once Boudreau showed up. And there's no reason to think that can't continue. After all, it's strength down the middle. Thatcher Demko, Quinn Hughes, and the centermen that they have. This is a team that can make a difference and be a contender, I think, for a playoff spot for sure.
Yeah, and health is going to be very important.
Well, which is true, Rick, for every team in the league.
Absolutely.
Again, back to the Flyers. Look at Sean Couturier, gone.
Look at Ellis. Look at Ryan Ellis.
Gone for the season.
Yeah.
For the season. I mean, my goodness gracious.
Horrible times in Philadelphia. I like what Brendan Shanahan did this week. It filtered out that he told Kyle Dubas, look, final year, Dubas went to him in the summer and said, can I get an extension? He said no. It's almost like a prove yourself. You haven't done much in the playoffs. Your thoughts on Dubas not getting the extension?
Well, I think there's lots of ways to look at it. I think one of them is that Brendan's probably trying to protect himself as much as he is trying to protect the franchise.
Yeah.
But it reflects, I think, the frustration that Maple Leaf fans and I think this market has for what has been right and wrong with the Maple Leafs. Has not won a playoff series since Pat Quinn was coach. I mean, that's a problem. This is a team that has come with a great deal of bravado the last 5 years and still can't get past teams that make bigger impacts and know how to play a gritty playoff stuff. This, in many ways, Rick, this is an 82 exhibition game series for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yep.
Will they make the playoffs? Sure, they'll make the playoffs. I don't think there's any question they'll make the playoffs. But can they play playoff hockey? At that point, I think the Canucks are in better shape to play playoff hockey than the Maple Leafs are.
How long have you been in Toronto, by the way?
Oh gosh! See, I growing up where I grew up, I moved to Toronto as a 17-year-old to go to university. I moved back west 6 years later, lived in the West, and then in the United States for 20 years, and moved here in the early 90s.
You just referred to Canmore, Alberta as this market. I think you've been in Toronto way too long.
Oh no. It's so ingrained when you get on and talk to people that you're talking from the strength of the 6 million people that live in the GTA, where hockey comes out of the concrete every day, out of the concrete. You can't miss it. You talk about it constantly, even though the Jays are a factor, the Raptors are a factor, the Argos aren't a factor. But you do talk about hockey in Toronto every day. And it's a different style of frustration than anywhere else now because it's not. No, listen. Remember, we used to marvel at the Rangers and the fans chanting, the Islander fans chanting 1940. Yeah. Well, that was 54 years. This is 57 years coming up now in Toronto. 57 years. I mean, it's an issue.
We know your heart's in Oliver, BC. We know that, John.
Hey, listen. I wasn't around for the millionaires, but my fandom started with the Western League Canucks and has maintained through all my time in the NHL. I was honored to early in my career that somebody said, "Does anybody want to travel to the West?" And I was the only guy to put my hand up, so I got to do the Canucks and the Flames and the Oilers. And that's been the best thing that ever happened in my career.
Andy Bathgate, Kiki Mortson, Len Lundy. How can we forget those guys?
Well, George Gardner in goal. Come on, Charlie Hodge.
Yeah.
I mean, Ted McCaskill. I mean, Duke Harris was my favorite player on that team. I loved that team.
Those guys wouldn't mind a back skate, John.
No, because they did, but they just came in from the bar 3 minutes earlier.
Yeah, they needed a back skate. Hey,
hey, listen. Remember, Donnie, when you were a kid, the biggest question is why isn't Billy McNeil in the NHL? I mean, he was the best player outside the NHL for years.
Yeah. Well, of course, fewer teams too, among other things. Hey, John, let's get serious for a second. The Oilers have a long history of resurrecting careers for players whose lives have gone awry. Craig McTavish, Evander Kane, now Jake Virtanen. Do you have an issue with that, or is it commendable?
Well, I believe in second chances in people. I trust Kenny Holland as a person and as a manager. He's in listening to him yesterday talk about having discussions with Jake Virtanen and having met Jake. There's a side of me that says I understand, I sympathize. It's a tough one. It truly is. But people. I mean, you have to. It goes to the court system. Do you trust the court system? And if you trust the court system, he was found not guilty. He can't wallow for the rest of his life. He can't be penalized for the rest of his life if the system has said not guilty. And the other practical side of this is, Donnie, is that, Jake Virtanen is going to Edmonton if he signs, to a team that's going to pay him the minimum, because that's the only type of player they can afford to get right now because they're so tight to the cap. Mm-hmm. So there's a practical side of it. There's a side of a societal side of it, and it's a difficult one. Would I have done it? Probably not. But I respect Kenny enough, and I think after what they did with Evander Kane and how honest they were with Kane, and how Kane has been such a factor positively on the ice for the Oilers, that I think you have to trust and give Kenny another chance at this one too.
Going to shoot in the 80s today?
God, I hope so. The ball will go 10 to 15 yards farther here in Alberta than it will in Ontario. So, but that doesn't mean that I'll be able to hit it straight.
So right over the green is what you're talking about.
Well, that 7-iron used to go 150. Now it's going to go 165.
Awesome, John. Have a good round. Thanks for this. We'll talk to you next week.
Cheers, boys.